Hi everyone. This is my second time here in Oslo. I was here just beginning of this year. Did a couple of meetups. It was great to be here. It is great to be here again. Again, my name is Serhat Can, not Can. So I work at Atlassian, working with the Opsgenie team within Atlassian. And I help DevOps Days global team as well. I'm part of the global team. I'm running different events in Turkey as well. So I'm from Turkey. I'm also an AWS community hero, but I'm a little bit afraid after Bernd's amazing talk. I really like the talk. So today we are going to talk about on-call. That's the topic that I'm really passionate about. And before we start, I'd like to ask, are you working in an organization that expects you to be on-call? Okay, like 20, 30%, that's great. And do you think on-call sucks? How many of you think on-call sucks? Okay, same amount, same people. Awesome. So I think on-call can be a big problem, but there are a lot of practical solutions that can make on-call better. And there are a lot of practices that we can employ, and we can use them to change our organizations to make on-call better for us and for our companies. And we want to reduce the stress of on-call for our on-call teams. And obviously in all discussions, why is more important than what? Because why will help us make the right calls. So first, let's take a little look at why on-call matters. And I was going to give an example from public clouds, but I'm just going to talk about something a little bit more important. And like even yesterday, there was a DNS problem with AWS, and it brought down many people using like S3 for about 8 hours, for example. So these things happen all the time. But I'm going to talk about something more serious. So this incident, there was like two incidents in US. One was in 2014 on a June morning in Washington. So IT managers of 911, the emergency service provider, got an alert. So a man tried to reach out to 911, but he couldn't. And he was able to do it by borrowing someone else's phone. So they reported the problem, but no one responded from the telecom provider. But the problem only happened for this specific telecom provider. And the problem is only solved after 4 hours later without a response. And in another problem related to 911, just last year in 2018, emergency cell phone provider faced in a more serious incident. So they used this data center provider across different telecom providers for 911. And the data center provider had a big outage. And it brought down 911's E911 Wi-Fi version of 911 down for over a day. So it's a really big issue. It affects people's lives. It's not just, we are running a CRUD application that helps people, do some simple stuff. It's just, affecting people's lives. So on-call is important no matter what. But this is just an extreme example, and we know extreme examples from all cloud providers. They are happening all the time, but when we look at it, we fail all the time. Our applications fail all the time. So we need people who can solve these problems on-call. And obviously, if you can't go to the beach without your laptop and get up at 2 a.m. in the morning, on-call is not fun. There is no way to make it great at that point. And there is a research backing this up. So researchers from the University of Hamburg work with 132 individuals from 13 organizations. So they collected daily survey over a period of 4 days, during which they were required to be available during non-working hours, and during 4 days, which they were not. So they also collected cortisol level samples, body's main stress hormone, from 51 of them. And the results reveal that on-call isn't leisure time, and there are significant effects of extended work availability, even if there is no alert. Even if you don't get any alert, on-call affects you. Just, being ready, feeling that kind of stress affects you. And acknowledging this fact really helps us invest more in on-call and take actions to ensure that we put enough effort and money into on-call, into making on-call better for the sake of our health of people. And as a software development industry, we are doing a lot of things, taking great steps towards reducing this stress by making small iterations. Especially DevOps definitely helps. We start automating a lot of things. We use DevOps principles and toolings, and they definitely help. And this is a stat from Atlassian survey, which we surveyed like more than 500 IT professionals, and we found out that teams adopting CI/CD solutions, 57% of teams reports fewer bugs and outages. So this is a great step towards doing that. And the approach of you build it, you run it, makes it even better. And it changed our whole industry. And we had a similar experience back then in Opsgenie like 3 years ago. We were like 15 people. And at that point, it was only 2 co-founders were taking on core responsibilities. Everything was fine, but then we started scaling our teams. We got an investment, and we wanted to scale our teams to 100 people. At that point, only 2 co-founders weren't able to know everything related to our applications. Our applications numbers were also increasing drastically, and at that point, they were also sick of basically getting up in the nights and maybe not knowing what to do at some point. So we started putting our developers on call as we're growing. And it solved a lot of problems for us. And I'm sure it will solve a lot of problems for your teams as well, especially if you have like one central ops team that does all the on-call work. It is not healthy for them. It is not healthy for your company or your applications as well. So let's talk a little bit about why developers on-call matters, why it is very important in making on-call healthier. So first, we have ever-increasing demands nowadays, right? Customers want availability, reliability, more security. It is just, they think that it should be already there. So we need developers who can solve these problems. We need people who on call as first responder who can solve these problems. Not, we shouldn't just page someone and expect him or her to just reach out to the right person, and it takes a lot of time. We spend a lot of time in the meantime. So developers are often the most qualified people who can solve incident problems. And another part of it is being on call enables developers experience the problems in the first hand. So they see the effects of compromises they make. They start caring about things like testing, alerting, monitoring. They feel the pain, so they start caring about what we call usually operational concerns. So often the result is, we have better instrumentation, monitoring, alerting, overall better reliability for our applications. And obviously, it solves one of the biggest conflicts between dev and ops teams, right? And often we miss this, but it's very important because management support is extremely important if you want to make a change in your organization. And putting developers on call help managers see the effects of reliability work, not spending enough time on reliability work. So now they can see how much their developers spend time on dealing with alerts, right? Before, just operations teams was on call, so there is dealing with alerts just was their responsibility, was their whole job. So they didn't really care. Now they have clear data on why they should prioritize reliability work. So at this moment, I want to share a personal story with you. So me and my friend worked on this feature for about a month. We worked on indexing our alerting data to Elasticsearch. First, let me say, so I was working as a developer in Opsgenie back then. So Opsgenie is an alerting and on-call management solution, which means alerting page is the first page you see when you log into Opsgenie. So it's kind of a big deal. So when you log into that page, the alerts you see, they are retrieved from Elasticsearch. And we worked on this feature, indexing Elasticsearch. So it was 5 p.m. in Friday evening, so we couldn't wait. We were ready to ship with my friend. So if you are gonna remember one thing from this presentation, do not ship your code after 5 p.m. on Friday. Otherwise, you will have some problems. So we sent the update to production. Again, it was about 5 p.m., 5:30. So we look at the monitoring dashboards. Everything was looking fine. After 10 minutes, we were just about to leave, and we got some customer reports. Unfortunately, we couldn't get this with the automated monitoring. So customer success team gets some reports. They were able to replicate the problem. Problem was sometimes happening, sometimes it wasn't happening. So we didn't see it once we tried it, but they were able to replicate it. So they paged the alerting team. They knew the alerting team was responsible for the alerting page. So alerting team on-call person receives the alert. And they add me as a responder because they see which features we are sending to production from our Jira dashboard. And so I get paged as well. And we try to figure out what is wrong. We spent some time, but at some point, we decided to bring in the incident response team. Back at the time, we didn't have a lot of engineers, so it was basically a couple of senior engineers and co-founders. But we decided to bring the incident response team together because it was kind of a big deal. People were seeing inconsistent alerts, even if they were acknowledging alerts. They were seeing it's not acknowledged. In fact, it was acknowledged, but on Elasticsearch, it was not in the right state. So we decided to bring the incident response team. So we had this option back then to disable one of the clusters. So we had 2 clusters, and we decided to try it, and this stopped the problem. So, but at that point, we still couldn't find what was causing it. So we started debugging, and we found a bug in the code that was basically we weren't thinking about the async nature of Elasticsearch and just, writing to 2 different clusters without thinking about that. So we wrote the fix and sent the fix, but there were still inconsistencies because we already had some data, corrupted, let's say, in Elasticsearch. So we ran the data sync job, bring everything back into a healthy state. It was about 2 a.m. in the morning when we left our office. So now I'm going to share some lessons learned from this incident, as well as some of the lessons learned I learned while working with our customers. But it is important to know that, I love this quote from Andrew Pleshafer. He's one of the initiators of all this DevOps movement. So you haven't really learned anything until you change your behavior. So I'm sharing this, but it would be great if you actually go to your company and try to make some of these a reality. So the first one is we should avoid heroism. We should avoid hero approach in on-call because practically it doesn't scale well. If you have just a couple of people, it would be okay. But if you exceed a certain threshold, it will definitely cause a lot of problems. And obviously, we talked about it is the best way is to put developers on call. And you can think about building rotations, for example, not more than a week, so engineers have more time. Engineers aren't on call for a long time. But there is more to this. So a couple of suggestions. Make it easy to call for help. So if an engineer needs help, you shouldn't expect the engineer to go to a friend or ask for a favor. It's not a favor in this case. You should make it easy. For example, in the alerting team's case, they add me as a responder. They know I'm working on the issue, or they could just say escalate to next person and get more help. Make these kind of things easy, and you should build. So especially for critical alerts, you should build at least 3-step escalation paths. If on-call person on the alerting team isn't available somehow, we are all humans, so we may have something urgent, even if we are on call. So make sure that you have backups, at least 3 backups. So for a prior to one alert, for example, we we have 4 steps actually for prior to an alert. At the third step, we page the whole team. Fourth step, it goes to CEO, CTO, and the higher level management as well. One of the things we often think about is arranging development duties during on-call based on pager load. So at some point, we started getting a lot of alerts, and we decided to not include on-call engineers to sprints. So that is something you can do. If they have time, we expect them to work on alerts, make alerts better, make dashboards better, basically work on operations. So after some point, once our alerts get better, they had more time. So we included them like half. We expected like half of their time they can spend on working on new features while they are doing on-call. So it depends on where you are in your journey, but think about not including on-call engineers in the sprints like they will have all the time in the world. They will not. So one thing that we think is very useful is assigning on-call temporarily to the engineer who is making the deployment, because most of the time incidents happen after we change something, after we deploy something, right? So if, let's say, someone from alerting team is making a deployment, just automatically you can just overwrite schedule and route all the alerts to related alerts to the on-call engineer, and it would help speed up the process, and you would able to like reach out to the right person at the right time. So the second one is about alerting, and alerting can definitely be the best or worst friend of on-call engineers. And there is a great example, unfortunate example, but it's a good example showing how important alert fatigue is. So in 2010, a Massachusetts hospital patient died after alarm signaling a critical event went unnoticed by more than 10 nurses. So they basically thought that there's nothing real, and they just get these alerts all the time, so they basically skipped it. And there are many reports of that like this because of the turned off alarms, ignored alarms, or unheard alarms. And most of the times, hopefully there is no one dead, but obviously our applications affect our companies in many ways. So that is why it is important to invest in alerting, because we don't want our people to skip alerts. We want our people to focus on the right thing at the right time. So we should proactively fight against alert fatigue. So my suggestion is, if you have tons of alerts, just no alert is better. Just turn off all the alarms and start over, because it will be really hard to deal with them one by one. And make the difference between tickets and alerts very clear. Not everything needs immediate response. So we just make a table what is important for you, prioritize them, and for like not urgent issues, think about maybe you can still create an alert and expect on-call engineer to work on them in the morning, but do not page them after working hours. And you can add context onto the alerts and make them more understandable. If you just say your CPU increased like 100% or whatever, it doesn't help anyone. You should add more context and try to like add, for example, logs onto the alerts, make it easy without changing between tools, make it easy to take like one-click actions if it's possible, and add some runbooks to guide engineers on what to do. And also what we do is we try to identify and review repeating alerts. So if there is a repeating alert, we send a message to a Slack channel and report, basically say that this is a repeating alert and mention the team. So words matter, obviously, and we can talk about post-incident reviews, post-mortems, but if we are not acting blameless during the incident, it doesn't matter if it's just not written, obviously. So we should have this blameless culture, not just post-mortems. For example, think about it, like during this incident that we experienced with Elasticsearch, if our co-founder come and yell at us, or if say something bad, again, it doesn't matter if he's not all these things is not written in a paper. We still be afraid in the future. We will still be afraid of sending things to production, and we will still be afraid of making mistakes. So it is important to be aware of this. And don't get me wrong, like it happened to me as well. For example, one of our engineers was like trying to send a new feature to production and basically failed and caused a partial outage twice. So at that point, your natural tendency is to blame the people, but it is not the right move. When something like this happens, I always think about two things. First one is obviously blame full commands help no one, and we should assume good intentions. And the second one is people are not the root cause of incidents, so we try to figure out what is the underlying reasons behind these failures, and try to make it better, because again, people are not the root cause of incidents. There's something wrong probably that is causing these kind of problems. And another important point is embracing open transparency. It is key. It means being vulnerable, willing to fail in front of others. It helps us better understand and have conversations. And sharing knowledge makes everyone smarter, so you should encourage people to speak up. So we every 3 weeks, we have meetings about our on-call, and everyone from the engineering team attends these meetings and talk about their like pain points, for example. What are they struggling with? How we talk about like how we can make our alerts better, how we can make our rotations better if there's a problem. And you should also think about creating open on-call policies, meaning policies that are open for everyone to see, and you should expect people to live by them. There are some questions that I think needs to be stated clearly. For example, are engineers supposed to be on call during nights? And you should not just talk about this, after you hire someone, for example. You should be very clear about these questions even before. And if they're on call during nights, for example, do you have a flexibility of working from home in the morning? Or are engineers supposed to do development work during on call? Or maximum how many times an engineer can be on call in a month, for example, things like this. And obviously, another important point is the best way to predict the future is to create it. So we should invest in training our people. That is key in making on-call less stressful. And there are a couple of practices, and I think the most useful, the one that you should definitely do, it is, I think, easy as well, is shadowing. And in my little poll, like 80 people, it's not much, but I found out that if people know about on-call shadowing, they tend to use it. If they have no idea what it is, obviously they don't. So shadowing is it is similar in other places, like in other industries or in other parts. We use shadowing as well, but basically you have a senior, an experienced on-call engineer on call at the same time with an inexperienced junior one. So you basically page them at the same time. So when you start, you do that during the daytime, not the nighttime. Then you can also do it during the nighttime as well. But I suggest you do it during the daytime because they can come together and work on the issue if needed. So they learn from each other. They learn by doing together. It's just like peer programming, but for on call. So I really suggest using this one if you want to help. You want to get speed up with the on call for your employees. And another one is game days. It's basically instant response practice, but it's come from chaos engineering as well. So you can come up with a scenario and come together and have fun at the same time. Eat some pizza, play some game, and try to figure out like how to solve a problem. And in the meantime, see like if something is working or not. And there are also, if you're interested in podcasts, there are some great podcasts about DevOps, and there is like one specific podcast about on-call night waves from Jay. I suggest you listen to this as well. It's great. We also have, Atlassian also have team playbooks. So these team playbooks will help you review your team's health about a lot of things. It can be on-call team's health, or whether like you do incident response well or not. So it gives you like easy to track like point by point things that you can employ. And finally, I would like to say that you should definitely compensate for on-call. Obviously, don't do it on a per alert basis. It can result in some problems. But remember, we talked about on-call is not being a leisure time activity, right? And it is, paying for on-call is very common in places like this, in Nordics or Europe overall. It's not as good in US like here. But it should be the norm, because on-call is a leisure time activity. So we talked about these key takeaways. So we talked about first putting developers on call, giving developers on call responsibilities. It helps our company. It helps our reliability as well. It helps people not get a lot of alerts and not burn out. And you should create sustainable rotations and clear escalation paths to reduce stress. And we should be open about our policies and share this knowledge internally. And we should be striving, and we should be investing in a blameless culture. We should talk about problems. And obviously, alerting is a big part of this. So we should review our alerts regularly, and we should practice instant response. It can be official training as well, game days, or definitely shadowing is a big part of it. And finally, we should remember compensating on call. So I really like this quote from the Site Reliability Workbook. It's, if you probably have read it, but if you haven't, it's the Google Site Reliability book. It has great content about on-call instant response as well. So I picked this quote between the lines. It's amazing. So they say we never achieve reliability at the expense of our on-call engineers' health. So we should put our people first, and remember, the less stressful the on-call is, the healthier your teams are, so they can focus on what really matters and can enjoy and bring themselves, best of themselves, to work every day. So thank you very much for listening to me. That's all.